So we'll take some questions, and I just had one question for all of the panelists, which I think you all will care about, and that question is, as an entrepreneur, was the greatest challenge and the greatest opportunity as you were launching your business? What do you consider that to be? And maybe we can start with you, Jeff.
Thank you again. I think my biggest challenge was that 99% of the people, including scientists and mechanical material engineers, told me what I was looking for was impossible. So I had to continue in an almost faith-based pursuit of technology, which the majority of people were telling me was impossible. So the constant questioning of the existing status quo and perseverance through that to uncover technology. And sitting here, and I know you all have a million questions about this technology, and just so you know, it took me 2 years to really fully understand this technology because it is so complex and it is so unlike traditional plastic production because it can utilize a variety of feedstocks, including all of the biopolymers listed above, including demethanized animal feces, recycled paper, recycled wood. Really any feedstock can be created into using the Palantic process into new materials. So one of the biggest obstacles I had to overcome was the impossibility of my pursuit of what I was trying to accomplish. And thank God, for a number of reasons, I was able to identify the top scientists, who ironically is from Fukushima, Japan. So as you can imagine, and on top of launching this company, we've had to go through the issues with the tsunami and the environmental disaster followed by the nuclear disaster in his hometown. So the obstacles of the environment have also been quite, ironically difficult for me to overcome because we're so close to, the environmental destruction. It affected some of our supply channel briefly. Even being in New York, I mean, last year, I don't think people realized, but we had, within like 45 days, we had a hurricane, a typhoon which shut down the subway, an earthquake, a tornado, and then a blizzard. And the head of my delegation for the UN was without power in New York City for 3 weeks. So the environmental catastrophe that's unfolding is making it more challenging as a business person, as an entrepreneur, to do business. So we've actually, in a sense, had to take a step back and make sure that at scale we are prepared. So all of our partners have undergone extensive decentralization of the mechanical process technology so that now we're not so reliant on one part of the earth for something. It's all being regionalized. And we have been awarded partial funding from the state of New York to build our first production facility in North America, where we'll be creating true green jobs. So access to capital, I think, was another issue. There is capital out there, and there's a huge group of angels who are looking for innovation and entrepreneurship. It's just getting to the critical mass to the point that you can access them. So I guess access to capital, environmental catastrophe, coupled with lack of the industry to have foresight. And as I mentioned, our technology is, I guess the quickest way I can explain it to you is, it's as different as going from a traditional sort of cake decorating bag where you squeeze frosting through a bag onto a cake and make roses, as that is to a advanced machine that you can put in all the ingredients and have it come out chocolate chip cookies. So it's very, very different. It involves measurements of more than 1,000 times per second for pressure, viscosity, and flow. We actually build back the organic matter molecule by molecule in crystallization arcs that maximize their strength. That's how we're able to achieve our results, is through advanced, really, really advanced biomimicry-based mechanical process technology. So sometimes looking behind you for the solution, as many of the people here have, is the quickest way to the end. And if you are outside of the industry, you may think you're sort of an outsider, but make sure you understand that you may be just moments away from discovering the solution everyone's looking for. So those are my sort of main 3 obstacles.
Wow, I think my biggest obstacle was I was really naive. But that actually ended up being my biggest strength, which is what sometimes how it ends up working. I really foolishly, I didn't have a background in design. I didn't work for a big CPG company. I had no idea about these issues. I was literally ironing my shirts 6 years ago. When I had an ironing board out, you get a glass of water, you pour it into the iron. And I thought, too bad they don't have a cleaning solution that I could pour into that iron. I thought, well, I'd definitely have to buy a concentrate because I don't need 2 things on this ironing board. I don't need a bottle to mix it in and then a concentrate and combine them. I needed that to be all one bottle. in my mind, and I thought, well, how hard would it be to make a bottle like that had 2 holes in it? And that was the big thing, that was actually was impossible. They weren't making bottles with 2 holes in it because blow molding won't let you do that. The fundamental way that bottles are made, 99% of them are made blow molding, so you can't do that. So I had to create a whole new manufacturing approach around that simple hole in the bottom of a bottle. But thank God I didn't know how difficult that would have been, because I never would have tried. So be naive is number one. It can be your greatest strength.
Yeah, I agree with Jason. I think probably, yeah, it's naivety, but it also can be to your advantage of working through things, working through challenges. You know, this was a situation where being an entrepreneur, I saw it more as I didn't start out as wanting to be a business or to make money. I saw it as a problem. It's a solution that needed to be solved. It was a challenge, and that was my passion. And I'm lucky enough to be able to go and talk more about it to people. But I think if I can just pick one thing, I think one of the things that I have a challenge with is with the competitors that are selling BPA-free bottles, so plastic bottles. They think, well, why should I buy yours when I can buy a BPA-free bottle and it doesn't break? And I think that what they don't know is that the BPA-free bottles are often contains derivatives of BPA, BPS, BPAF, BPAB, which have been shown by research. There's a research project done March 2011 that shows that oftentimes these bottles that are BPA-free have BPA derivatives in them that can leach out even more endocrine active chemicals than BPA. So unfortunately, because there's not an accountability or disclosure of manufacturers of what's in their products, the general public doesn't know about that. So a lot of it is education on why that is. But luckily there's articles that are coming out more and more, and research is coming out more and more about the dangers, and people are taking a stance on that, and we're making some change from the ground up.
Okay, let's take some questions.
I just wanted to make one more thing, and I forgot we discussed it earlier. One of the biggest obstacles I've faced is that my materials are outside of the current standards. So, for example, there's been so much greenwashing that I don't even find value of putting BPA-free on my products, even though, of course, they are BPA-free. BPA is not the problem. There are a number of additives, including the hydrocarbon itself, that interact with, and from my perspective as having a deep understanding of endocrinology, it's actually the hydrocarbon, which is an animal-derived hydrocarbon. So we're eating, for the vegans in the room who use plastic, you're eating out of, in a sense, dead dinosaurs or phytoplankton, and it's very bizarre to think of, but it's not vegan. So part of one of the things I've encountered, for example, when we did our FDA testing on the REPEC material that you guys felt, which is the most durable plant plastic that we know of on Earth, it came back from the initial, and SGS is the largest consumer testing agency. They do something like 75% of all FDA and equivalent of global FDA clearance internationally. When our results came back, the scientist at the lab didn't actually believe his own results, because I am also very pleased to say that this material does not leach at all. So in all 3 FDA preliminary tests, including putting the product in liquid of 130 degrees Celsius for 2 hours, putting it in alcohol, and putting it in a base solution both for 2 hours, there was 0 leaching. And I don't mean 0, because 0 would have meant 0.1 or 0.01. We actually scored ND, 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 which is no detection, no detection, no detection. So the lab had actually never processed anything like a polymer that had no detection in any of the tests they had ever, that they were administering. So they literally had to run the test again. Another standard setting problem I faced, there's so much greenwashing, I have to now radioactive carbon date all of my products. So radioactive carbon dating is traditionally the science used by archaeologists to date products. So I have to do that in order to prove that my carbons are coming from plant carbon, right? So the point is that we're sequestering plant carbon, that it's not petroleum. When I did this test, the EcoPEC material that you saw came back with like 80.3% modern carbon. And I'm like, that's so weird. That's much lower than what I expected. And I found out the current test regime is set up to count anything over 8 years as petrochemical hydrocarbon. And because some of the trees, the recycled sawdust that's used in that product, are over 8 years old, I was testing false positive for petroleum. So I've literally now had to almost recreate the standard, because even the test that's designed to prevent the greenwashing is actually testing false positive for hydrocarbon, because it's only looking at 8 years, which the doctor mentioned is the typical time horizon. But when you're talking about incorporating a variety of waste biomass and a variety of waste in general, these issues are going to have to be addressed, because the issue is not whether or not it's coming from biomass, or it's that it's not petroleum. But the test is testing for everything older than 10 years as a false positive for petroleum. So when I start incorporating garbage, who knows what it is? Maybe we can take Tetra Pak and grind it up and upcycle it into sunglasses that have aluminum kind of finish. That stuff will all test false positive for petroleum under this test that is supposed to guarantee the biomass content. So I've encountered an enormous amount of standard setting issues, which is part of the reason I'm here at the UN Rio Plus 20 Summit and here at this conference, is to bring up some of these points. So I just wanted to make sure I said that, because whenever you bring a new product to market, it is constant sort of trying to adapt into the status quo or the traditional system. And when you have a material that most people think is impossible to engineer, much less produce at mass scale, efficiently and at a price point where there's a market, it just makes penetrating the market that much more difficult.